everybody. My name is Dr. Tracy Kmeyer. I am the chair of the history department here at U of L and also the co-director of the Oral History Center. I want to welcome all of you to this event. It's our second year of doing some kind of public history event in the fall. So we're really excited about the turnout, very excited about the turnout. Very excited to have you all here to hear about public history today. Before I do the introductions, I just want to let everybody know there is going to be food out there afterwards, so please feel free to hang around, share some refreshments, get to know each other. Part of our hope here is that our students can use this opportunity to network with some of the community people who are here, with each other, and just sort of build a public history community here in town. So, and you know, any food that's left over just goes to feed grad students tomorrow. So really, go ahead and eat it up tonight. Okay, well tonight we have a panel discussion. We have two distinguished visitors. I'll introduce them first. Dr. Dichtl is the Executive Director of the National Council on Public History and an Adjunct Assistant Professor of History at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. He is also the President of the National Coalition for History, a consortium of more than 50 associations which serves as a voice for the historical and archival professions in Washington. Dr. Dichtl received his PhD in 2000 from Indiana University. His book, Frontiers of Faith, Bringing Catholicism to the West in the Early Republic, was published by the University Press of Kentucky in 2008. One of his main emphases with the NCPH has been to co-author the report, Tenure, Promotion, and the Publicly Engaged Academic Historian in 2010. And I have to say that is a report that I've already circulated widely here at U of L and has gotten a very positive response, by the way, from people in all kinds of disciplines. So we're very appreciative of that. Our next guest is Dr. Craig Friend, who is the CHASP Distinguished Graduate Professor and Director of the Public History Program at NC State University. Dr. Friend received his PhD from the University of Kentucky in 1995. His research focuses on Kentucky history, Southern history, and the early Republic. His book, Kentucky's Frontiers, published by Indiana in 2010, was the winner of the 2011 Kentucky Governor's Award. He has also published Along the Maysville Road, the Early American Republic and the Trans-Appalachian West, and Family Values in the Old South, along with edited collections on Southern manhood. As I mentioned, he is the director of the NC State Public History Program, which, just a little plug here, it's one of our new sister ACC schools, so there we have something in common. And he is the National Conference Coordinator for the Society for Historians of the American Republic, Early American Republic. So thank you both for coming here to visit us. So the discussion is going to be moderated by our two public history colleagues. Many of you know these folks already, but just in case you don't, I'll go ahead and introduce them. Dr. Lara Kelland is a new assistant professor in public and U.S. women's history here at U of L, having joined us just this summer. Dr. Kelland comes from the University of Illinois at Chicago, where she received her PhD in 2012. Her research focuses on modern U.S. social movements and their employment of history as a basis for organizing. Before coming to U of L, Dr. Kelland held a number of public history positions in Chicago, working with archives and special collections, doing oral history and photography projects, and working with young people. Dr. Vivian is an assistant professor in public history and history of the New South, and is our public history program director. Dr. Vivian came to U of L from Johns Hopkins University, where he received his PhD in 2010. Correct? Yes, okay. His current research, which tells the story of Northerners who moved south in the post-Reconstruction era and rebuilt Southern plantations in the model of the Gentleman's Hunting Lodge, combines preservation with cultural history. He's been responsible for building our public history program and making it the success it has so far today. So thanks again, thank you for coming. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. Hopefully we have a really great discussion with the guest speakers and with the audience too. So thanks very much.
Well, I just want to get us started with a little nuts and bolts social media information. Among you in the audience tonight is an Intro to Digital History course, and they will be taking leadership in tweeting tonight's events. If any of you tweet regularly, I encourage you to use the following hashtag. U of L PH Chat. That's U of L PH Chat. Thank you. And with that,
okay, I'm glad we got that out of the way. Thank you all for coming. It's very exciting to see all you here, and we're very excited to have our speakers here tonight. Our plan for the evening is for Lara and myself to have a bit of a conversation with Craig and John for about half an hour about broad themes in public history and where we think the field is now, where we think it's going, and then to open up for questions from the audience. And as I've said in trying to promote the event, I'm very excited to have as many people from local organizations and institutional partners here. I give a lot of public history 101 topics, or 101 talks, but it's rare to have an opportunity to have a more sophisticated discussion with both grad students and fellow professionals. And so I expect you all came with good questions. I don't have much doubt. But
Could we ask how many people are from such institutions? How many
Sure.
are students? How many are other? Or?
Students first. Who is a proud U of L student in some capacity? Go Cards. Okay. Professionals, institutional partners, about half-half. Okay. Let me ask a broad question to get us started then. I've been working in public history in varying capacities for going on 20 years, not quite. And when I first entered the field, it seemed to me that public history was an established discipline, had a curriculum, professional organizations, but was still not particularly prominent within the historical profession as a whole. And it seems to me that that's changed pretty dramatically. Public history as a field of activity and public historians as a variety of historians have greater prominence within the Organization of American Historians, the Association, the American Historical Association, and in some ways, as evidenced by the recent proliferation of public history programs, public history is kind of hot right now. If you have to name a couple of things to explain the shift and where things have gotten us to this point, what would each of you gentlemen say?
Would you like? Yeah.
I need a drink of water.
Well, while you're drinking, I think one of the reasons is it's become politically necessitated. I think we live in a society where history as an academic profession is looked at skeptically by a lot of our fellow citizens. You've heard politicians complain about the academic historians. History coming out of the academy is not read by our fellow citizens. And that's why, you know, in the profession we sort of joke, we're writing a book for the other 5 people who really care, right? Sadly, there's a kernel of truth to that because the citizenry really doesn't appreciate academic history. So I think in some ways it's become politically necessary for history departments and academic historians to find ways to now reach out to the public. And otherwise, I really think that we're looking at a discipline that in schools like mine, a STEM school, you know, gradually will be squeezed as much as possible to make room for the sciences and the technology. And so, so that's one reason I think that it has proliferated so much in the last 15 years.
And I would add several other things to that. Public history has been present in those associations, the American Historical Association, the Organization of American Historians, from the beginning, in the beginning being the late 70s, early 80s, when public historians sort of self-identified themselves as a subfield of history or a separate profession from academic history. And you all know this, but public history existed long before that. People just called it history, going back 100 years or more. But in the late 70s, when it was self-identified, the AHA was supportive, the OAH was supportive, but the members of those associations were not necessarily so supportive. So there have been committees and studies and various programs in those associations. And then the National Council on Public History, the organization I represent, was started 30 years ago. And you know, so that support has been there, but now there's been 30 years of momentum. That's part of it. There are a lot of models, great models of great programs for new programs to borrow ideas from if they want to get started. But it is this outside pressure, and I would characterize it slightly different. I agree with everything Craig said, and I would just add that I think there's pressure in the last 5 or 10 years, 5 years especially, from administrators, college presidents, university presidents, provost deans, who are rallying around the idea of civic engagement. And that's for a lot of different reasons. One reason is that there are associations or groups pushing that idea. There's the Kellogg Foundation supported a study of land-grant, or a report by 4 land-grant colleges, and they kind of, in that report, I think it was 1996 or so it goes back quite a while, reiterated the idea of the importance of colleges and universities doing something for their communities. They were not just ivory tower research institutions, but they had a much more engagement with the communities they were in. There are also the Carnegie Foundation came up with a new elective category for colleges and universities for self-identifying themselves as civic engagement institutions. And so that, when the Carnegie Foundation, which puts in tens of millions of dollars into higher education, when it speaks, administrators listen. So those kinds of things are happening. There's Imagining America, which is a consortium of, 70 or 80 colleges and universities that are committed to this idea of civic engagement, and that's been around for at least, I think, a decade, and they came out with a big report in 2008 about trying to help faculty and departments think about their work being more than scholarship for research, but in an engaged capacity. And then my association, in conjunction with the AHA and OAH, came out with another report a couple of years after that has pushed this idea. So there are all these things that are piling on each other and adding momentum. And then it also comes down to just jobs. In a recession, parents and students get very concerned about that the time in college is going to be leading to something very quickly. And for a lot of history departments, public history seems like an easy answer to that, and it's a much more complicated thing to get into, but
We can talk.
we can talk.
We can talk. Well, this is possibly leading us there. Along with the shift of this embrace of public history within the academy, I think many public historians, both who work in the field and in the academy, have expressed gratitude over their work being seen as legitimate by academic historians. And I think most would agree that it's a very exciting time to be a public historian. I'm wondering if there's a flip side to that, and if you see if you have any concerns about the academy sort of taking a stronger role, institutionalizing of the field.
Sure.
Do you have concerns?
Perhaps it's an entirely positive thing.
No. It's a great thing. We all want to be warmly welcomed in the environments in which we work, and it's great to have colleagues in history departments embrace the idea of public history. It can lead to too many. I think that's one of the issues we're probably here to discuss: is are there too many public history programs in the country? I don't know if there are too many right now, but I think there could be too many sometime soon. As I said at the end of my last answer, setting up a public history program or a degree certificate in public history or a major in public history for undergraduates or graduate students can seem to be an easy way for a department suddenly to start engaging the community and offering something to their students who are thinking more about their careers and what can I do with history. So it can be a problem if it's not done right and done with depth and breadth and lots of real connections to public history institutions and community groups around that institution. I don't know, I can think of some other problems. But
To piggyback on that, I think one of the problems, and I don't disagree with you that there aren't too many programs now, but I think a lot of history departments think that if they add one course and a couple projects, there's suddenly a public history program. And I think that does the student a disservice. I mean, that student graduates from that program and goes on the market against people who have had far greater training, both in the classroom and in the field. And so, I question, you know, I hate to bring it,